Hello everyone. There's been a lot of weather across the West region, certainly over the last 7 days since we last had a video here. I think the next 7 days look quite busy as well. In the interest of your time, I'm just going to jump right into it. We have a lot to cover. I'm starting here. This is a live webcam. I think you may have just seen it change there. This is the Visitor Center on Mount Rainier. The Cascades have had a tremendous amount of snowfall in the last 7 days. We talked about a lot of these systems coming in. We saw that over the weekend. Multiple feet of snowfall there in a lot of the elevation regions. When you hear that or you see maps of it, I mean, it looks like a lot. We can paint it with some pretty colors, but I think it's important. You kind of put it into perspective, gives you a sense for how much snow is really falling. I think the webcam here of the Visitor Center kind of does that. You can see there that building basically buried in snowfall. There's actually a parking lot that surrounds this center. You wouldn't know that looking at the webcam here. Tremendous amount of snow falling here in early January. I was curious, so I had to look up a picture of it, what it looks like in summer when all this is melted and people are visiting it, for lack of a better word. And that is what it usually looks like. You can see the parking lot there. Snow basically up to that second floor window and then covering the second floor over on that other side of it. And again, going back, that's what it looks like. So a tremendous amount of snowfall coming to this area. If we go back to the map and the pretty colors I promised you, you can see the multiple feet of snowfall that we've had through the Oregon and the Washington Cascades there. An area that technically was running below average in terms of the water year at this point in the year, but this has gotten them a little bit closer to average. Another area that's been running well below average was the Sierra Nevadas. They did get some additional snowfall here through the central and parts of the northern Sierra here over the weekend and just over the last few days. I did want to mention it's the afternoon when I'm recording this video here. Unfortunately, seeing a report of an avalanche, potentially with search and rescue underway near Lake Tahoe. So hoping and praying everyone's okay there. We get some of this new snowfall in a short amount of time. That is a concern. It is winter, kind of in the peak of the water year here, so that is something we occasionally see. Unfortunately, there are other avalanche advisories and warnings out as well, just across the western region due to the recent snowfall. This is a map I think we looked at last week. Let's see if I can update that here more recently. Basically, the colors here show us where we are in terms of that water year to date snowfall for each of these different basins across the western region. And these kind of orange, the yellow, the red colors show us where we're below average. Green, blue, and then darker blue, that's where we're at or above average. And you can see most of the western region, just like we were last week, running below average. We did get a little bit closer to average. So parts of the Northwest, particularly the Cascades that we just mentioned, running closer to average now with the recent snowfall. Parts of Utah, busy ski areas here, getting a lot closer to average. Unfortunately, the Sierra Nevadas still below 50% of their average for the water year to date at this time. So this is starting to become something of a concern just because it takes a lot to make up now for the slow start. So we're going to keep that in mind as we go through the forecast. Not only out over the next 7 days, but out over the next 30, and then into the months ahead before the water year is kind of over in the end of April, getting into May. If we look at a little bit more closely at this, this is the Cal Sierra Snow Lab here in the Central Sierra. It's actually near Lake Tahoe and the Donner Pass here. I think the last time I showed this graphic, this red line here showing us where we are water year to date, was kind of plateauing here with some of these recent systems coming through. We've kind of gotten back on the graph, but running well below that blue line, which is average kind of over the last few years here. It's going to take more of these events between January and February to get back up toward this average, and it doesn't take routine events. We have to get bigger events and more routine, more than average to get back up to average because we had that slow start. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Just because we have these kind of busy events coming through to talk about doesn't necessarily mean we're getting back to average and the concern for a low year is waning. It's going to take more of these events, but nonetheless, this is a start in terms of getting back toward that average amount. By the way, a number of neat statistics pictures here from the Sierra Snow Lab. If you want to go here, cssl.berkeley.edu. There's the URL up there, and kind of a nice resource. They have a webcam. You can jump over and see the live snowfall coming down here on Wednesday afternoon. If we jump over and look at the radar, we can see the precipitation coming into Northern California here. It looks green just kind of on the raw precipitation, but certainly in the higher elevations. The Sierras here, we just confirmed looking at the webcam that we have snow coming down in the Central Sierras here with additional amounts expected overnight. If we jump over and look at the all hazards map, valid as a Wednesday afternoon. Winter storm warnings posted for the Central Sierras and the Northern Sierras. We have other winter storm warnings posted across the west. A freeze watch for the San Joaquin Valley that we'll talk about. Some wind advisories and warnings here across Southern California with some stronger winds moving through. Did want to touch on one more thing. If we look way up here in northwest Montana, some of these light blue colors, those are wind chill advisories and warnings. So that is something I'm concerned about going into kind of Friday, Saturday, maybe even Sunday as well. We'll talk about that in the forecast for some very very cold temperatures ahead for folks in northwest Montana. I don't think very covers quite the extent of it, but we'll get to that in just a bit here in the video. We did have some cold temperatures to talk about, kind of looking past over the weekend and then just over the last few days here. I did want to cover that before we went any further. If I take these temperatures back, surface temperatures back to Monday morning, early Monday morning, we had some very low temperatures in the San Joaquin Valley, below 30 degrees in some select areas. Saw a lot of pictures of frost, got down below freezing in some of these more rural areas, 32 degrees near Fresno. The Sacramento Valley wasn't free of some of these frost and cold temperatures as well. Lower Colorado River Valley getting down into the 40s and upper 30s at times through southern Arizona as well. If we go into Tuesday morning, we again saw very cold temperatures kind of shifting south a bit, certainly in the San Joaquin Valley, very cold temperatures. Delano, some of these more rural, kind of low-lying areas, saw temperatures drop below 29, 28, even 27 degrees Fahrenheit, at times getting down into that hard freeze territory. We did just touch 32 degrees Fahrenheit in Imperial, down here as far as southeastern California. Didn't get down to freezing in Yuma, but got close in that kind of 30 to high 30 range. And then areas getting closer to freezing here in southern central Arizona. So cold temperatures here over the weekend and then just over the last few days, and even getting kind of here to Wednesday morning as well in some of these areas to talk about. Another thing I wanted to mention was Hawaii. They saw a cold front come through over the past few days, a lot of rainfall coming in there. This is not rain that we're looking at on this map here. This is actually a map of the days of all these different climate divisions since their last tornado warning. And if you look across the Midwest, this green color here, it shows you that their last tornado warning across kind of the tornado producing area of the country was really anywhere from like 130 to 170 days ago. So getting back kind of to the summer of 2023. That makes sense. That's when that severe weather season is kind of getting going. If you look across California, we did have tornado warnings in the Central Valley last year. We had one come through in the flooding that we saw at the end of December. Not uncommon to at least get 1 or 2 tornado warnings in the Central Valley every now and then, but rest of the West region, not really something we talk about too much, maybe outside of parts of coastal Oregon where some of those can come through in bigger events. But the one I wanted to point out is if you look at Hawaii here, its own division, big old one right there. They had a tornado warning in Molokai come through. Not a very common occurrence, but those can happen with some of these frontal systems that come through. Not aware of any kind of touchdown or damage reports yet, but we'll see if anything comes out of that. Just kind of interesting to see that there. Not even they escaped the busy week of weather that we just had. If we look across the radar across the northwest U.S. here, we can see this next system coming in. We talked about the snowfall coming down in the central Sierras here, precipitation, snowfall in the upper Cascades moving into the Willamette Valley now as well. If we jump over and look at the forecast kind of through the evening here, I'll take this through the weekend as well from the ECMWF forecast. This is valid here as of Wednesday afternoon. There's that snowfall pushing into the central Sierras we just looked at that webcam, expecting precipitation to come in here into parts of the central coastal California, the Bay Area. Nothing too substantial, but enough to get some precipitation observations in. Lesser amounts, more trace amounts here in parts of the Central Valley here as we go through the afternoon and evening. That system moving through, getting a little bit more hectic here in the Sierra Nevadas tonight, getting into early Thursday. As we go through Thursday, a glancing system coming across here in the Pacific Northwest, parts of the Cascades getting additional snowfall here, and that improving snowfall here across parts of Idaho, northwest Montana as well. If you look closely, could see some showers try to sneak through southern or southern coastal California here. Again, not expecting anything too substantial in terms of precipitation accumulations, but perhaps something to prompt a rainfall observation or two. That moving out as we go into Friday, and that's when we're going to see another precipitation making system, snowfall system coming into parts of southern Oregon, associated with a low pressure system there Friday night. That picks up overnight Friday into early Saturday, expecting more precipitation coming into parts of southern southwest coastal Oregon, far northwest coastal California, additional rainfall for the southern Cascades and far northern California. Eventually getting into parts of the Sierra Nevadas, the northern or at least central Sierra Nevadas, with potentially some more substantial coastal rainfall for Northern California going through the day on Saturday, potentially getting as far south as the Bay Area and into the Sacramento Valley in terms of some measurable precipitation as well into Saturday PM. Eventually trying to come down the coastline Saturday night into early Sunday. Kind of unclear how much precipitation is actually going to get into parts of the Central Valley and some of these central coastal areas. But right now the expectation is we will get some rainfall into here going through the evening Saturday into early Sunday. Perhaps the more important news in terms of watching that snowfall deficit is expecting another good round of precipitation and snowfall pushing up into the Sierra Nevadas, improving the snowfall situation there, and then also into the interior west, where we did see some deficits getting a little bit closer to average when we looked at those snowfall maps. That kind of takes us through the weekend. We get out into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, getting out kind of into that 7-day range of the forecast, looking like a break in the precipitation, potentially a break in the cold as well going into next week. Not kind of clear where we're going to go from there, at least into the end of next week, but nonetheless, kind of been busy here, certainly over the last 7 days. It looks busy through the weekend here in terms of weather to talk about. I think we'll get something of a break here for the western region going into the work week next week. I did want to talk about temperatures quickly. We have a freeze watch valid right now for the San Joaquin Valley. If I take you into Friday morning, this is Thursday morning here. You can see temperatures trying to get down toward the freezing level here in the Sacramento Valley. San Joaquin Valley staying out of that freezing territory tonight into tomorrow morning. That includes the lower Colorado River Valley staying out of that freezing territory. But if you go into Friday morning, those temperatures really dropping as that system comes through, brings that colder air mass in behind it. You can see 32, 33 degrees Fahrenheit forecast for parts of the Sacramento Valley, bringing frost and freeze concerns. Colder temperatures expected in the San Joaquin Valley, especially these low-lying areas that saw that 26 or 27 degree Fahrenheit reading just over the last few days, expecting again something potentially like that on Friday morning. Can't rule out again touching freezing down here in Imperial County or the lower Colorado River Valley at times, depending on how exactly you're positioned here, and that includes south central Arizona as well. So more freeze to be concerned about here going into Friday morning. Saturday morning looks to warm up a bit, particularly for the Central Valley of California and the lower Colorado River Valley. An area I can't include in that conversation is far northwest Montana. Talked about the wind chill advisories, talked about the wind chill warnings earlier in the video. If we look here up at the low temperature forecast for Saturday, January 13th, negative 33 degrees Fahrenheit, the forecast right now for the Golden Triangle of Montana on Saturday morning. Sunday morning, looking at something a little bit similar to that, but perhaps a little bit warmer. Warmer is not the right adjective to use when you're talking about negative 26 or negative 31 degrees Fahrenheit, but technically warmer compared to where we're going to be on Saturday morning, at least right now in the forecast. Friday, taking a little bit closer to now, also very cold, negative 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Very cold temperatures expected in northwest Montana, enough that you have to talk about staying safe, staying bundled up. Make sure you have somewhere warm to stay this weekend in those areas. If we look at the wind chill values here going out into Saturday, again, just kind of curious how cold we're going to get. We're talking, negative 50 degree, negative 55 degree wind chill in some of these areas. So extreme cold coming into parts of Montana here this weekend, something to be mindful of. We did see a lot of systems come through as I kind of quickly went through that 7-day precipitation forecast. Again, looking at another very good, healthy round of snowfall for the Cascades. Sierra Nevada is also looking at a foot or more, maybe even 2 feet potentially, and it can't rule out something higher than that in some of these highest elevations here. This will help get us, again, closer to average. It's not going to bring us all the way back to average in 1 week, at least looking at the NBM snowfall totals over the next 7 days. And you can never take these snowfall maps verbatim. They just get an idea of which storms are going to bring some of the heaviest snowfall. But additional improvements here across the Intermountain West, again, likely bringing some of these areas all the way back, I can say, to average, potentially the Cascades as well. When we look at that kind of map next week or the week after, I don't expect the Sierra Nevadas to be back toward average, but maybe, not 50% of average, but running closer to something like 60% of average for the date, or 70%, with some of these areas likely getting back to 90 or even 100% of average. So more snowfall to come in the forecast over the next 7 days as well. If we look at the precipitation anomalies from the ECMWF over the next 7 days, so this is kind of irrespective of snowfall, just includes all precipitation. You can really see the corridor of highest precipitation expected just kind of through the weekend here, with Sierra Nevadas and the Northern Sierras included in that. Southern California getting a bit of a break, as well as the lower Colorado River Valley, and then Washington seeing a relative break for this time of year in terms of those precipitation amounts over the next 7 days. If we actually look at those raw amounts through Monday, and then I'll take this out to Tuesday of next week, so looking through kind of a 7-day forecast out to Tuesday of next week, see snowfall coming for the Sierra Nevadas, this liquid precip falling As snow, heavy rains coming through parts of southwest Oregon, parts of northwest California. We'll see coastal rain at times with a few of these systems, particularly here overnight tonight and then this weekend as well, and can't rule out some rain getting into southern California at times as well, with the Central Valley seeing low amounts, but again, possible to see some rain here over the evening tonight and then through the weekend. If we want to look big picture at temperatures, kind of precipitation here, this is looking at the upper level height anomalies valid really over the next 5 days. This takes us between January 10th, Wednesday, out through Monday, January 15th. And it's this big upper level trough responsible for a lot of those cold temperatures that we're talking about. You can see it kind of centered here in terms of those anomalies over Montana. That's why we're talking about that extreme cold there in northwest Montana. But again, we talked about those frost and freeze concerns all the way through the San Joaquin Valley of California, even getting into parts of Arizona. As I take this forecast out into next week, we'll see those anomalies shift east, and then we actually get some upper level ridging dominating across the west here. Not the most potent upper level ridge you'll see, but enough to kind of give us a break from some of the cold weather, I think, and some of that kind of routine precipitation that we've talked about in the forecast here. If we go out beyond that, getting kind of out into next weekend with some troughing here off the coast, potential to bring some more precipitation in, but perhaps some warmer storm systems here through parts of California and Oregon getting out into next weekend. That's getting out into that 10-day forecast, though. Don't want to talk too prematurely on that front. If we want to look out beyond that toward kind of the end of January, something we've been following this year is the Madden-Julian oscillation to kind of give us an idea of where we might see some of those Pacific jet extensions, atmospheric rivers, bigger events coming through parts of California, perhaps Southern California. We're seeing the MJO make this quick move back around, potentially getting out into the Pacific as we go through the end of January. That's what these dates are here on this forecast here from the ECMWF. So this is the 16th of January, 18th, 20th, all the way out near the end of January. There is some potential for the MJO to try to get back out into the Pacific near the end of January. That would potentially return the chance for one of these Pacific jet extensions. We're talking about the subtropical jet pushing up into California, more rainfall, more snowfall to talk about in the forecast as we get closer to the end of January. Again, a long-range forecast here. Can't take these things verbatim, but that chance is there if this forecast holds, like some of these forecast models are suggesting right now. If you look at the ECMWF long-range forecast out 30 days in terms of those precipitation anomalies from January 17th all the way out to February 17th, very long-range forecast. There is some signal here for more wet weather coming through parts of California, certainly coastal California up through northern California. Kind of curiously, again, similar to December, seeing these deficits here in the Sierras on this forecast in particular. Not sure how much we want to read into that, but it is a signal we saw in December as well. Bigger picture beyond that in terms of the seasonal forecast, kind of peaking here in terms of El Niño here in the Pacific. That was the expectation that we'd peak, in El Niño in December or January. I think we're seeing that peak here. If we look at the ECMWF forecast for El Niño going forward into 2024, the expectation is for that to weaken. That's common. That's expected. It's not something that should be a surprise to us. But the ECMWF forecast models here, all these different iterations, expecting this weakening to occur going through spring into summer. Some of these model runs here have it weakening slowly to the point where even getting into early summer, we're technically still in an El Niño. Some of these weaken a little bit quicker to the point where perhaps by summer now we're talking about the potential for a La Niña getting out into summer 2024. I don't want to talk about that too much because I think it's a little early to talk about in terms of percentages, but there is some chance of that for El Niño to flip to a La Niña. It doesn't happen every time we have an El Niño event, but it's a possibility we don't want to ignore as we go through spring here. I think the focus right now, though, is that El Niño's still here. It hasn't weakened yet. We're actually kind of near a peak here, if anything. If we look at those sea surface temperatures, departures from average, we can see El Niño here cooking in the Central Pacific, all those warm temperature anomalies, the orange and reds on this graphic here, and that's expected to bring additional precipitation or at least support these Pacific jet extensions, the subtropical jet, and increase precipitation chances for parts of California, potentially Southern California, Arizona, and hopefully improve some of the snowfall deficits that we've talked about here in some of the maps previously. If we look at the latest ECMWF seasonal outlook for February, March, and April, so this is a 3-month forecast looking at precipitation departures from average. This map shifting a little bit drier for the northwest here, so Washington, Oregon, parts of northern California. Curiously, some areas here have been fairly wet over the last few days that we've talked about, and then for the forecast here as well. Keeping an eye on that. This isn't an uncommon kind of picture with El Nino in spring, where you're drier in the north, wetter in the south, but not a huge wet signal in the south either, besides maybe Southern California coastal regions and Central California coast as well. Not the wettest forecast as well for parts of the Sierras here. So there is, we've had such a slow start. We're seeing some snow in the forecast. That's not going to get us all the way back to average, that 7-day forecast, at least for snowfall. Seeing the potential for a potentially additional maybe atmospheric rivers, Pacific jet extensions near the end of January, early February that could help get us back toward average in the Sierra Nevadas, but it's becoming something of a concern that we're starting so below average here in the Sierra Nevadas in terms of that snowpack. Less concerned about the Colorado River Basin with the snowfall expected here over the next 7 days and the fact that they're already a little bit closer to average with some of the recent snowfall there. That kind of sums up the big picture stuff. This was a longer video today. Thank you for watching if you made it this far. That's all I have for you guys this evening. I'll talk to you next week.